One name keeps coming up in the Epstein files that nobody saw coming. It's not a politician, not some Wall Street billionaire, someone you watched on television for nearly 20 years. Someone whose whole career, their entire public identity, was built on one word: kindness. And the connection between that person and Jeffrey Epstein's world, it goes way deeper than just a passing mention in a document. We're going to get into all of it. But first, let's talk about what's actually inside these files, because some of what people find in there is going to make your stomach drop.
You probably already know a little bit about the Epstein files. Maybe you've seen the headlines. Maybe you've gone down the rabbit hole yourself. Either way, you want to know which names actually showed up, what the documents actually say, and why even the people who got fact-checked are still all over the news. That's exactly what this video is going to walk you through. You're going to see the coded language that was buried inside official FBI emails, voicemails, and private messages. Now, let's not waste anyone's time and dive deep straight into it. Now, before I start this, I want to say one thing that I'm not going to go much deeper into who is Epstein and what he did, as most of my audience already know that. But if you're under the rock, just know that this guy is just an extreme version of Diddy. For years, he ran a trafficking network that abused young girls. And he used his money, his private island, and his relationships with powerful people to stay completely untouchable. He got arrested in 2019 and then in a federal jail cell. While supposedly on with cameras that mysteriously stopped working, he was found dead. The official story was, but most people never bought that. After years of pressure, the government passed something called the Epstein Files Transparency Act. It forced the Department of Justice to release everything they had. And what dropped was genuinely staggering. Nearly 7 million pages of documents, emails, FBI memos, flight logs, private text messages, all of it. Then in January 2026, another 3.5 million pages hit the public. And within hours, people were finding things nobody expected to find. Attorney General Pam Bondi also released a list. Over 300 names described as government officials and politically exposed people mentioned somewhere in the files. Famous names, powerful names, names from every corner of money and influence in America and beyond. Speaking of Pam Bondi, well, last week lawmakers were not that happy with her. I don't need to explain. See it yourself. You swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief. So help you God. I didn't. How many have you excused me? I'm going to answer the question. I answer my question. No, I'm going to answer the question the way I want to answer the question. Your theatrics are the question the way I asked it. The survivors of these heinous crimes deserve better from this Department of Justice in particular. It is shocking that the department did not redact the names of Epstein's victims, but it did redact the names of their abusers. It is about you taking responsibility for your Department of Justice and the harm that it has done to the survivors who are standing right behind you and are waiting for you to turn to them and apologize. Have you apologized to President Trump? All of you who participated in those impeachment hearings against Donald Trump, you all should be apologizing. Anyway, being mentioned in these files does not automatically mean you did something wrong. Some people show up in news articles that Epstein received. Some are in a media digest. Some are just in an address book. And pizza isn't even the only one. The word cheese appears over 1,100 times. Then there's beef jerky. Email after email talks about jerky being stored in freezers, delivered urgently. Analyzed carefully. Epstein sends a message to a guy named Steve Hansen and says, "Did we analyze the beef? Did we analyze the jerky?" There are dozens of these emails. And online, TikTok videos breaking them down were hitting 37 million views. Whether this is code or not, one thing is hard to ignore. Wealthy, powerful, health-obsessed men obsessively referencing pizza and jerky in conversations that have absolutely nothing to do with food. And then it gets darker because the files also contain 52 mentions of the word cannibal, 6 mentions of cannibalism. A restaurant called Cannibal shows up. An academic syllabus about cannibalism appears. There's a direct email conversation between Epstein and a man named Richard about cannibalism. And then there's this Epstein's own message found buried in the files. I watched all of these videos. Don't send any more. Ghislaine Maxwell writes back, "I can't stomach any of this." Videos of what? Of who? The part that has people completely losing it. The 300 names. Okay, So let's talk about the list because this is the thing that really sent the internet into overdrive. Attorney General Pam Bondi released a list of over 300 names, people described as government officials or politically exposed persons mentioned somewhere in the files. And some of these names are genuinely jaw-dropping. Jay-Z, Beyoncé, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Richard Branson, Bill Gates, Michael Jackson, Elvis Presley, all in there. Now, and I can't stress this enough, a lot of these people show up because they were mentioned in a newspaper article that someone sent to Epstein, or they were in a media digest, or their name was in someone's address book. Being on this list does not mean you committed a crime. It literally does not mean that. One congresswoman actually called it out publicly. She said putting Janis Joplin, who died when Epstein was 17 years old, in the same list as Larry Nassar is deliberately misleading. It throws everyone into one pile and lets people fill in the blanks themselves. That's a real problem. But here's where it gets more serious, because some names on this list do have real documented connections that are worth talking about. Richard Branson. Emails in the files showed direct social contact with Epstein. Invitations to Epstein's private island. And in one letter, Branson writes to Epstein months before his arrest. It was really nice seeing you yesterday. Anytime you're in the area, would love to see you as long as you bring your Hiram. Branson's team says all meetings were in group or business settings, and that they cut off contact once the full picture became clear. Howard Lutnick, now the U.S. Secretary of Commerce. The files show he was in contact with Epstein years after he claimed he had cut all ties. And in a 2012 email, Lutnick casually invites Epps to dinner and mentions that 8 children, ages 7 through 16, are on his boat. People are calling for his resignation. So far, nothing has happened. Larry Summers, former Harvard president. The emails show him going to Epstein for personal romantic advice. Epps describes himself as Summers' wingman. Their messages continued just months before Epstein's 2019 arrest. Summers has since publicly said he is deeply ashamed and has stepped back from Harvard and resigned from the OpenAI board. Leon Black reportedly paid Epstein over $150 million. Ellen DeGeneres. For nearly 2 decades, she was the face of daytime TV. Funny, warm, totally safe. Be kind to one another. That was the whole thing, and people genuinely believed it. So, let's be upfront about what the files actually show because this matters. Ellen's name does appear in the Epstein documents. Her Twitter handle and show clips were sent to Epstein inside media digests. Articles mentioning her show up in his files. Snopes and PolitiFact both looked into it and confirmed there is no direct email between Ellen and Epstein. No evidence linking her to criminal activity in the documents. But here's the thing, and this is what millions of people can't let go of. It's not one fact, it's a pattern. And when you lay all the pieces out next to each other, they start to look like something. November 2024, Ellen and her wife Portia quietly pack up and move to the UK. The media explanation. She was upset about Trump winning the election. That story lasted about 48 hours online before people started asking a different question, because then Elon Musk posted. He reshared a post pointing to Ellen's 2016 birthday message to Diddy, where she publicly called him cuddle manuggle stuff and wrote, "You don't need to know why." Musk added one raised eyebrow emoji, nothing else. But the implication was crystal clear. She didn't leave because of Trump. She left because Diddy's investigation was getting bigger and people close to his world were starting to get very, very nervous. Diddy was arrested in September 2024 on sex trafficking and racketeering charges. Prosecutors say he forced victims into recorded sex acts he called freak-offs. And there is actual video footage of Diddy appearing on Ellen's show years earlier, looking her in the eye and saying, "I invite you to all my parties." Ellen laughs and says she never goes. That clip is now being analyzed frame by frame online. Then people started looking at the people around Ellen. DJ Twitch, her beloved show DJ, someone she called family, died by suicide in December 2022. And H, Ellen's ex-girlfriend, died in a strange single-car crash in August 2022. Both of them gone within months of each other. Both of it happening right before the Diddy investigation really started picking up speed. People are connecting those dots loudly. And then there's the workplace stuff. Because in 2020, 36 former employees of the Ellen DeGeneres show went to reporters and described a toxic, fear-driven culture inside that show. claims of harassment, misconduct, and a system where nobody could safely speak up. Warner Brothers did an investigation. Some producers were removed. Public statements were made. But here's what one of those former employees, a producer named Hedda Muscat, who was there from day one in 2003, actually said. Phony, liar, hypocrite. We were all petrified of her. She was not nice. Then in June 2025, comedian Margaret Cho said on a podcast that Ellen had been cold and dismissive to her for decades, despite the two of them knowing each other since the 1980s. Cho said when she appeared on Ellen's show in the 2000s, Ellen treated her like a complete stranger, like they had never met. And in August 2025, a former cameraman came forward with new claims. So, here's the question that people can't shake. If Ellen maintained a completely fake public persona for 19 years, if she smiled and said, "Be kind to one another" every single day while her own staff was petrified of her, then what else was she hiding? That's the question. And right now, nobody has an answer. Okay, so now let's rewind to a moment that a lot of people missed the first time they saw it. 2016, Justin Bieber is on the Ellen DeGeneres Show. He's a teenager. He's been famous since he was 12 years old, and the weight of that, the pressure, the loss of a normal childhood is visible all over him in this period of his life. Photos he never consented to. But Ellen keeps going. She pushes. She jokes about it. She says she heard it was flattering, and Justin laughs along, because what else is a teenager going to do when he's sitting across from one of the most powerful women in Hollywood? The Pizzagate theory started trending on Spanish Twitter. People across multiple countries were watching a pop star's music video and asking the same question. Is he trying to tell us something without being able to say it directly? And then there was the Instagram Live moment. Someone in the comments asked Justin to touch his hat if he had been a victim, and he touched his hat. Now look, that could mean anything. It could mean nothing at all. But that single moment got tens of millions of views. And it sent people back to every old interview, every awkward moment, every uncomfortable silence, watching for things they might have missed the first time, including that Ellen interview. Chrissy Teigen. While all of this was happening online, another name was getting dragged back into the conversation. And this one comes with receipts that people have not forgotten. An old video clip of Chrissy Teigen resurfaced right, files were dropping. In it, she's on camera and she says, "Nothing I wouldn't eat or drink or try. I would eat a now." That clip alone sent people into a spiral. But then they went back to her old tweets. Tweets from the Pizzagate era that read as deeply inappropriate when pulled out in this context. And then in one single night, Chrissy Teigen deleted 60,000 tweets. 60,000 tweets. Not 50, not 500, 60,000 gone overnight. Now, in 2026, as the Epstein documents are flooding the internet, her name is back. People are tying her to Ellen through overlapping Hollywood's social circle. 60,000 deleted tweets in one night. That's not something the internet just moves past. Now, here is a name that almost nobody in the English-speaking world was talking about when the files first dropped. And it might actually be one of the most significant things in the entire release. Jack Lang. He's 86 years old. He was France's Minister of Culture for years, one of the most influential cultural figures in French history. And buried inside the Epstein files is a short video clip. Epstein being personally shown around a building by Jack Lang himself. That alone got people's attention. But then French investigative outlet Mediart started digging, and what they found is genuinely hard to explain away. In 2016, Epstein opened an offshore account in the US Virgin Islands. Half the shares in that account were allegedly owned by Caroline Lang, Jack Lang's daughter. And then 2 days before Epstein died in that jail cell, he signed his will. And in it, he left $5 million to Caroline Lang. 2 days. $5 million right before he was gone. Caroline Lang told media that the offshore account was meant for art investments and that she was never actually paid by Epstein. But she did not declare that St. Thomas account to French tax authorities. She has since resigned from her position as head of a major French film producers group. Jack Lang told French media he met Epstein through Woody Allen and said he would have cut off all contact if he had known Epstein was at the center of a criminal network. He also reportedly used Epstein's car and his private plane on multiple occasions. And this is the thing that this whole story keeps coming back to. Epstein's network was not just American. It was global. Politicians, billionaires, cultural figures from multiple countries, all orbiting around one man. And the question of who knew what is still very much unanswered. Okay, so I want to address something because a lot of people are going to watch this video and say, okay, but none of this is proven. The fact checkers say Ellen is not implicated. The coded language hasn't been officially confirmed. So why do so many people believe these theories anyway? And honestly, I get that question, but I also think the answer is pretty simple. Trust is dead, and it didn't just die on its own. It got killed repeatedly by the same types of people in the same types of positions. Harvey Weinstein abused women in Hollywood for decades. Everybody in the industry knew. Nobody did anything. For decades. R. Kelly committed crimes against young women for years while everybody smiled and played his music on the radio. Bill Cosby was convicted. Then he walked free. Diddy's parties were an open secret for years. Everyone around him knew. Nobody said a word until it was impossible to ignore. Elaine Maxwell was convicted for helping Epstein traffic children. She still has not named a single client. Not one. And the Epstein client list partially released, heavily redacted. The people with the most to lose are still the most protected. So, I want you to drop your thoughts in the comments. Which name hit you the hardest? Do you actually think justice is ever going to come from these files? I want to know what you think, and I read every